Good afternoon. This is the second session of our workshop on Destination Success, which is on English. And as we talked in the first session, we were looking at the 4 skills of English: speaking, listening, reading, and writing. And we said that reading, which is to do with comprehension, is a fundamental skill required across classes, subjects, and throughout life. We looked in the first session on the primary segment and some parts of middle. Let's just focus quickly on the senior classes, the middle and the senior classes. So to take things forward, again to do with comprehension, here is the English program, and I'm looking at class 6. It's easy navigation. We have genres, reading skills, comprehension. You can see the different tabs there. I am therefore going to focus on different skills and areas I wish to. If you just glance at the genres, the different types that we have, and you look at comprehension here, let's look at one that is most often used, which is the fiction passage. And so what does this contain? This has the story, the passage.
Click the Power Up button to get going.
It's time to read a narrative fiction story about a girl's experience in a new school. It's called I Will Be Stronger Than the Fear in My Heart. This story also includes 2 interesting poems for you to enjoy.
We were talking about the different buttons there and the bulb.
A plot is what happens in a story. It's a series of events that lead to the solution of a problem presented in the beginning of the story. What is the plot of the story? Look at the sentences that are highlighted to help you find out what the author is telling us about the beginning of the plot. As you continue reading, look for more sentences that add to the plot.
We've been talking about strategies that we need to help our students learn to improve their comprehension. And in all the sessions that we've had so far, whether it's science or social sciences, we've been talking about how comprehension is important in all those subjects. And that's why we're saying that comprehension is a fundamental skill. At each point in these long stories, they are meant for the middle and the senior classes, we have what are called while reading questions. Read a part, have a question to enable children to be able to understand the passage given to them clearly and easily. And this is a very well-known strategy, used across schools. There is, of course, an entire section on how do you use the strategy of asking questions, kids to ask questions, to be able to understand passages better. In this one, we have the questions here given. A teacher may use this. A teacher may add her own questions to enable students to understand it better. We can, of course, read the story aloud. We can read it silently in a classroom. We can ask questions using the bulbs here, the bulb icon. The teacher can also ask questions in between to ensure that children are following the story. And just to understand that what happens after we've done this, so the story is played out and we've enjoyed the story. We have poetry in between as well. And there's a resolution as well of the story. So here's my passage, and then of course we have the questions on the comprehension passage, which are of different kinds. Here is a set of questions which is in the nature of long answers. They are working towards a higher order thinking skills of questions. And please notice, in order to make sure that it is linked to the digital content, the entire frame has been given here for easy reference and easy familiarity of the students. Importantly, this is another strategy that's being used, which is that a part of the story and is presented to the child, and then the questions are based on that. But does this mean that the questions are only going to be based on the sections? No, because at the end, we also have what are called the global questions. It's important to know the different types of questions here. Vocabulary, trying to use a strategy of a context clue to make meaning of it. Idioms, which are literary features. And this section on idioms is available in another part which helps children to understand, which is linked to this particular story, or what idioms do in terms of language communication. Look at this particular question. It's empathy-based, it is value-based, it's also in some ways helping students comprehend passages at a much deeper level of the emotional link. Creativity. What question would you ask? And how would you take the story forward? So that's my long higher order thinking questions. And the quick recall ones, as always, come in the form of the digital questions to be done collectively in the classroom or individually in the computer lab, whatever facility works for the school.
Here's a quiz for you. Think hard and choose the best answer for each of the questions. Are you ready? Here is the first question. Choose the best answer by clicking it.
So, multiple choice questions, and as the children move forward in doing it, they're able to show that they've understood the story well. We're looking at this part. There are 30 modules here. Each of these has 4 lessons, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Each consists of 3 or 4 key elements. A passage for reading, different genres, a variety, information, non-fiction, fiction, science fiction, adventure, history, and so on. National and international. We have questions on the passages. We have vocabulary-focused learning and practice sessions. And we also have what are called the language areas, like idioms, similes, metaphors. Across each, we have the same approach of instruction with participation and collaboration, and we have practice and application. Which means if I just look at this particular program, as it stands, there are 30 modules, each has 4 lessons. That's 30 into 4, 120 lessons for the teacher to use in the way that he or she thinks is best suited for his or her classes and students. Is this difficult for me to use? If this is difficult, then we have, as we just discussed, the class-wise presentation, which is where we went to explore, and we just looked at the story on Nazia and the fear in her heart. We went to class 6, and we just went go. This is easy for teachers to use because we can then look at what particular area we want to look at and take things forward. In terms of comprehension strategy, this is just for one particular class, the different strategies which help children to be able to develop appropriate comprehension skills. So let me just talk about one which is, here on the graphic organizers. Explanation of the strategy in the digital form with an example.
Click the Power Up button to get going.
How are you? I want to take photos of things I see when I ride my bike. So I've been reading information about cameras. I want to buy one, but I can't decide what type to get. A film camera or a digital one? Have you ever had more information than you can handle?
Begins with a real-life situation of a teenager wondering what to do.
Here's something that can help you. It's called a Venn diagram. It's a chart that you can use to compare things and see how they're different and how they're alike. Let me show you how this works. Let's compare a digital camera and a film camera using a Venn diagram. First, let's look at the features of a film camera. A film camera, of course, needs film to take pictures. It's easy to carry. You can use a flash with a film camera. You usually have to wait to get the film developed before you can see the pictures. A film camera will not be as expensive as a comparable digital camera. Okay, now what about the digital camera? Let's look at its features. A digital camera needs a memory stick to store pictures. It is easy to carry. You can use a flash with a digital camera. With a digital camera, you can see your pictures instantly. A digital camera may cost more than a comparable film camera.
That's the basic information that we have.
Now that we know exactly what each camera has, let's compare the two. In a Venn diagram, we put the similarities between two objects in the area that the two circles share. We put the differences in the parts of the circles that do not overlap. This way, you can see at a glance the similarities and differences between the two kinds of cameras.
Very often in passages that students read, whether in English or other subjects, a lot of information is given to them, points that cover different segments, similarities and differences, and here's a strategy of making sense of it. What are my differences and what's my similarity? And that's a math item with the Venn diagram coming handy over here. Now, immediately after the strategy is being taught, here is a set of tasks on it.
Now I know how to keep track of similarities and differences, so I know exactly what to buy as soon as I save up enough.
So here's the practice that we were talking about.
Click the Power Up button to get going. Now, it's your turn to practice using a Venn diagram to compare and contrast things you read about. Read the paragraph, then drag the differences and similarities to the correct parts of the Venn diagram. Click OK when you have finished.
This is helping students make sense of how to comprehend a passage which has two items compared and contrasted. That, well, one thing that you can do is A, take down notes and then work out the differences, the similarities, and maybe now you can start talking about what is it that is different and what is similar. And there's a set of such quick questions that help students practice this particular strategy in a defined, structured way, and then enabling them to use that strategy for understanding longer passages. We were talking about the different kinds of questions that we have as well. So if you're looking here at the ways in which
Click the Power Up button to get going.
Hello. I've been reading an interesting article on the internet. It compares a radio and an MP3 player. There are quite a few differences and similarities between the two. You know, you can use a Venn diagram to compare two things.
So here is where the passage is going to be given to the children. They're being told you can use a Venn diagram to be able to understand it better. Let me move out of this and come to another part of this particular program which helps our students and our teachers. Here is worksheet. So along with the digital, we have the worksheets here. And what's interesting here is whatever is being taught in the strategy of how do you compare, how do you kind of put things together, on just that section is a worksheet which is strengthening the knowledge of the strategy. It also becomes in itself a comprehension exercise as to understanding the learning of what we have read or what we have heard on the digital content. Here's another PDF, which is a printable activity. And this is in the form of an extension, applying the strategy here. So there's a creative angle to the comprehension. There is the integration of the skill of writing with reading and the speaking and listening, because we can hear the story, we can talk about it, we can discuss. So here is an activity based on this particular strategy, helping students understand that the strategy also works for them for writing, because basis this strategy, now they put the points together, it's a plan, they can actually write an article if that's what they want. It might seem to us that this is very daunting. There's so much that we need to be looking at in this very big program. And how do I decide what I want to do? One, of course, is that we can do this class-wise. The other is this. As a teacher, this is very, very helpful to me to decide what it is that I can use or understand when I want to decide what particular part I would like to use. Okay, this seems to be some kind of technology hitch. So let me talk about this. We have here the entire program in terms of the print activities available for us, the take-home activities available for us as well. There is a kind of help being given on how to use the program. And if I look at course 3, which is what we were looking at, we can look at the different elements available to us in this particular program. Here is the set of the details of what it is that I can look at. Every particular strategy and skill in terms of the unit is made clear to me. And therefore, as a teacher, I know exactly what I want to pick up because that's an area that I want my students to be developing. There's another scope and sequence that we have over here, which is this one, on the same program for every DR product. What does each unit have? What is the particular genre? What's the focus of the vocabulary? What kind of reading comprehension exercise can you focus on? What is it that we're going to be looking at in terms of the quiz? And of course, what's the strategy that's going to be used? So across all the 30 modules that we have in the DR3, which is Destination Reading Course 3, I know the variety that I'm looking at. There's historical fiction. There's a newspaper article. The strategies of the main idea and the supporting details. How do you use summarizing to be able to improve your summary skills and also to be able to understand how to read passages better. Online article. The context clues to decipher or decode the meaning of unfamiliar words, which is there in synonym and antonym. And please note everywhere, it is instruction and practice and application very clearly being used. A variety of strategies and a variety of genres, as I said. But the question arises, and that's what someone's going to say, well, how do I use this with the textbook that I have in the classroom? Can someone help us over here? How can you use this program along with the textbook and the fact that we have a syllabus to complete? Okay, so here are some ways of doing that. It is always possible for me as a teacher to look at the 4 skills of English which I want to develop in my students. And I have the textbook, which of course also focuses on skills. The NCERT textbook does that, and so do the other books. And then I decide I want my students to get better at a particular skill, to get more practice of a particular skill, to strengthen that. I identify what I want to show my students and I use the digital content to be able to do that. How much time will this take is a big question because you have a vast syllabus, limited time. This depends on the teacher. I can complete a particular development of a skill, use of a particular strategy in 10 minutes, in 15 minutes, in 35 minutes, depending on what I want to use and how I want to use it in the classroom. So that's the flexibility available to me through the digital content. If I just quickly wrap up what we've been doing so far on English, and I look very closely at what we said we're looking at in terms of classes, then the ease of use for us is here. The genre per class, and there's a huge list of the genre. What are the reading skills that we're going to be covering, explained over here? What is symbolism? How do I write a persuasive piece, or how do I identify a persuasive piece? How can we make inferences in reading a comprehension passage? That's my skill. If you can see here, we have instruction, there's the practice, there's the worksheet, and there's a model as well. You can actually show students how we can apply the particular method of developing a skill. If we look here in terms of the strategy, and we will see a variety again per class, then that's the set of strategies, again each with the explanation of the strategy and the practice in the digital form and the worksheet. So it makes the teachers' work easier because this has been very carefully structured and vetted. And if I look at what else are the sections available for me? Then I have something on vocabulary, there is a whole section on grammar, and there's something on the writing skills. And for me as a teacher, I can decide which section I want to go to. And as we discussed in part 1 and now also in part 2, it's entirely up to me how to be able to use that. May I just draw everyone's attention here on the strategy that's being talked about. How do we help our students understand that we need to read a passage and then reread it in a particular way to be able to understand it? How do I explain to students that you have to look at the chronology or the sequencing of events and therefore look at the signal, the word markers, the signal markers there? Visualizing. Today we know that visual literacy is a very important literacy in the 21st century because we have the multimedia all around us. So the strategy of visualizing to be able to understand text better and therefore write better as well. Thank you.